Hi, Nikki Christine. And to all of the rest of you, thank you for your patience with this brief interruption to our regularly scheduled Has Been Hotel analysis. The Vaggie series will conclude next week. Nikki Christine, on April 12th, you released a video called When She Cheats with a Man, Why It Hurts More as a Lesbian. And on April 16th, I watched it. Nikki Christine, we don't know one another. I don't know where you're from or what kind of life you've lived or what brings you health, wealth, and happiness. From what you've said in your videos, it sounds like you've had a hard time being queer and finding love, both from the people who shaped your worldview and the people you've tried to date. I've never been cheated on, and I can only imagine how world-altering a moment like that would be. It sounds like you've taken it pretty hard. Even though intellectually you know that it's the cheater who's at fault and the cheater who has something fundamentally wrong with them, it sounds like you're feeling like you're not enough and will never be enough. I can't say that I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I'm also a queer woman who's thought a lot of these things. Maybe some of the same ones, and maybe some that are unique to me. In this open letter, I'm going to talk about the kinds of things I used to think about myself and my potential as a partner, and how I stopped thinking those things. I hope some of this helps you too, and anyone else who might need to hear this or something like it. I've mentioned on this channel before, though of course, Nikki Christine, you don't know that I came out while living in a small town on a conservative college campus in the South. It's not the same as being raised with hateful ideas, and I would never claim that parallel to what you've been through, but it's where I'm coming from. I often felt like an outsider, in part because people told me and my queer friends that we weren't welcome in both subtle, like destroying our property, and not so subtle ways, like directly telling us that we should go to different schools than the one we all attended, like Gay Jew, properly known as AU or American University. I tried my best to be resilient, but I grew to feel like I had a black rot inside me, sticking to my chest cavity and pumping through my veins. It felt like if I were to love, she would see a bog beast lusting after her, and if she touched me, she'd catch the black rot too. It was a terrible experience to be made to feel so afraid of my own ability to love. I recovered from this way of thinking with a lot of support from my closest friends, and it wasn't straightforward to unthink a lot of these thoughts. Convincing me that I wasn't full of metaphysical rot didn't do anything because I knew it wasn't real. I only started to heal when someone pointed out to me that any woman who liked me back would already have the rot on her and in her. This did two things for me. First, the mental practice of trying to imagine someone you love as being full of metaphysical rotting ooze forced me to reckon with the fact that it was a deeply disturbing thing for someone to hear me say. Imagining someone you care about rotting out from the inside is like a zombie apocalypse levels of messed up. Second, it showed me the flaw in my logic. If being gay causes the ooze, then I wouldn't be transmitting it to anyone, because if she liked me, then presumably she's already got it. It was only then that I could wrap my mind around the fact that if I were to fall in love, I wouldn't be some sinister force condemning her to a life of festering hollowness, which happens to be the name of my upcoming YA novel. Accepting that I wasn't contagious or inflicting myself on others started to help me heal from the idea that I was something to inflict on others. Basically, there's nothing wrong with me or you or any queer person that stems from being queer. Sometimes, however, we think that there is something wrong with us, and that stems not from reality, but from taking others' opinions into consideration. Sometimes we internalize what others think of us because we're social creatures. This impulse serves a social and even evolutionary function in a lot of circumstances. Say, for example, someone told me I was a real know-it-all and would make more friends and better friends if I led with curiosity rather than always assuming that I had the answers. That would be a kindness and an extremely useful piece of advice. But notice that being annoying and being a know-it-all are behaviors that we can change. These aren't immutable characteristics about ourselves, like race, religion, language, or sexual orientation. When people tell you not to pray, speak, or love, that's not a pro-social impulse. It's an anti-social impulse. If you approach anti-social criticism with the same openness as pro-social criticism, you'll invite in all kinds of self-doubt and even self-loathing. This happens most of all with people you trust, like family, and when you're so young you don't know the difference between good advice and meanness. These bits of information can take years to sort if you're sorting them in retrospect, but recognizing their origin helped me a lot. Once I learned not to hate myself nearly so much, I had to contend with the idea of what kind of relationship I'd be able to make. Niki Christine, you mentioned in your video all the things that come along with being in a relationship with a man: safety, normalcy, respect, money to a certain extent. I hear you loud and clear. I've been told straight up by my dates that they prefer the politics of dating men and the privileges that come with it. We can't compete with that. Society sees women as the little half of any relationship. If a man is 60% of the value in a relationship and a woman is 40% of the value in a relationship, how measly then is a relationship between two women? That's just 80% of a relationship. That's what society tells us, and that tells us we're not very good. I was self-conscious of that for a really long time, because why would any bisexual woman choose to date 40% when they could date 60%? Why would any lesbian happily date 40% when their friends can date 60% and they'd always feel like they got the bum deal out of life? I didn't want to feel like the bad choice that someone was forced to make because she didn't have any other options. In the last couple of years in the straight girl community, there's been a resurgence of a very old conversation about the unequal nature of heterosexual relationships, especially with the division of household duties. Sure, a man can be a great partner when you're walking from a restaurant to your car 2 blocks away after the sun went down, but how is he to actually live with? Does he take initiative with household chores, or do you have to manage the chores as well as do the chores? Does he step up to make dinner and do meal planning and prepping? Does he plan social events, plan menus, and make sure the kids have a babysitter? Phrases like adult toddler husband and sayings like, if you're raising 2 kids with a man, you're raising 3 kids, exist because so many women are fed up with the lives they've built for themselves. For a more traditional look at these arguments, I highly recommend reading the Ms. Magazine article, I Want a Wife by Judy Brady. It was written in 1971 and is as true today as it was back then. Here, I'll get you started. I belong to the classification of women known as wives. I am a wife, and not altogether incidentally, I am a mother. Not too long ago, a male friend of mine appeared on the scene from the Midwest, fresh from a recent divorce. He had 1 child who is, of course, with his ex-wife. He is obviously looking for another wife. As I thought about him while I was ironing one evening, it suddenly occurred to me that I too would like to have a wife. Why do I want to have a wife? I would like to go back to school so that I can become economically independent, support myself, and, if need be, support those dependent on me. I want a wife who will work to send me to school. And while I'm going to school, I want a wife to take care of my children. I want a wife to keep track of the children's doctor and dentist appointments, and keep track of mine too. I want a wife to make sure my children eat properly and are kept clean. I want a wife who will wash the children's clothes and keep them mended. I want a wife who is a good nurturer and attendant to my children, arranges for their schooling, makes sure that they have adequate social life with their peers, takes them to the park, the zoo, etc. I want a wife who takes care of the children when they're sick, a wife who arranges to be around when the children need special care because, of course, I cannot miss classes at school. My wife must arrange to lose time at work and not lose the job. It may mean a small cut in my wife's income from time to time, but I guess I can tolerate that. Needless to say, my wife will arrange and pay for the care of her children while my wife is working. It goes on like this, and for anyone who wants to finish it, I've got a copy linked in the description. And this conversation has had a resurgence in the last couple of years. Channels like YV Edit and The Financial Diet talk at length about the serious gaps in effort that show up in domestic relationships between men and women. Now, I don't endorse everything that either of these 2 channels say. I watched a video yesterday in which YV Edit nodded along as her guest talked about encouraging her daughters to sterilize themselves and not pursue romantic love. That's insane. I don't like that, but I also don't like to throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you need a pick-me-up and need a reminder of what you bring to the table, YV Edit has your back. Likewise, The Financial Diet keeps promoting astrology, and I wish she wouldn't. But I don't go to her for astrology. I watch her for financial advice, and to see her talk to other straight women about finding love that doesn't entirely drain the battery. Seriously, no one is more down about dating men than the women who have no other options. Finally, I'm going to point you towards one of my own videos in which I use a Pew Research study to determine that bisexual women settle down with women more often than a neutral sample would predict. Whether this is due to community-based factors, like the fact that queer people tend to be in community with one another, even outside of romantic attachments, or a genuine preference for settling down with another woman, is anyone's guess. But either way, it's not the case that bisexual women are flocking to cross-sex relationships to get the benefits of heterosexuality. Our society puts so much effort into propagandizing heterosexuality as the best and only option, and propagandizing men as the best and only option, that we sometimes need to take a step back and wonder if this is the only narrative we're being fed. There's a great video on TED Talks by Chimamanda Adichie called The Danger of a Single Story. It's pretty self-explanatory what it's about, but the examples she gives are really powerful. So I won't spoil everything, but I'll share one of her examples. She tells a story about growing up in Africa and trying to write stories that emulated the stories she read, which were all set in Europe. The protagonists had blue eyes, ate apples, and talked about the weather. But when she looked around at the people she knew, they had brown eyes, ate mangoes, and talked about more interesting things than the weather. And it took her time to realize that stories could be about those people too. In our culture, we love telling stories about how amazing straight love is for women, and it's become our single story. A lot of people think this is the only way to love and the only thing that could ever bring someone happiness, and it's not true. It's just propaganda to always repeat, men are the providers, they make women safe, they bring women social status, they make more money. This is some people's story, but it isn't the only way to tell or live a love story. Two women create a different dynamic than a woman and a man, and it can be a very positive dynamic to live with. We spend so much of our lives in our homes with our partners, and so little of our lives, by comparison, out in the world with our partners. Sometimes I feel a little less than safe kissing my wife in public, or even holding hands with her in public, but I would rather feel safe, secure, loved, and supported in my own home than have a bodyguard for that walk back to the car. So many women want nothing in the world more than to have a partner who can see that the chores need to be done, to have a civil, intelligent conversation about something that matters to them without their partner feeling the need to play the devil's advocate, and to not feel alone in raising the kids. Women are excellent partners to the kind of person who prioritizes these things, because we're taught from such an early age to listen, take others seriously, treat people with respect, and lend a helping hand. You have so much to offer a partner beyond what you seem to think you bring to the table, and I genuinely think you should check out YV Edit Until You Believe It, because she is a happily married straight woman who pulls no punches as to how much women bring to a relationship. Men really aren't the default preference for every woman, seemingly even straight women. And I'm sure there is someone out there who wouldn't be happy with how he treats her, how he approaches child raising, or any other traditionally masculine approach to life, but would love to settle down with you. She's out there. You'll find her, and you'll have to trust that you bring plenty to the relationship that she's going to absolutely love getting to live with. In the meantime, I wish you peace and healing. Be kind to yourself and take care of yourself. Read books that are queer positive. I'll list some below. And think about the fact that the feminine things that you want in a partner are not the default baseline human things that anyone could bring to the table, but special in their own way, and a very valid option that a lot of women prefer over what men bring to a relationship. It's not better or worse, it's just different. And when you're ready, you'll find someone who thinks you are so much more than baseline or default, but special and important in your own way that has nothing to do with not being a man. Now, if any of my regular viewers are still here, I want you to go to Niki Christine's channel, I'll link it below too, and tell her something you love about women, or something you love about being queer, or both, and I'll see you next week.